Okay, let's dive in. What if I told you that the biggest successes, the real game changers in life or work, they don't always come from those huge dramatic moves?
Right.
What if actually they hang on something, well, something almost invisible, like the power of paying really close attention to the small stuff, the
It's a
details?
fascinating way to put it. We naturally look for the big bang, the grand strategy reveal. But when you really dig into it, historically or even in today's world, that decisive edge, it so often comes down to the tiny things, the
Yeah.
specifics.
Exactly. And that's really our mission today for this deep dive. We're exploring that underestimated impact of, let's call it strategic detail, looking at everything from ancient battles to, how we handle things day to day, personally and professionally. We've pulled together some really interesting sources: military histories, strategy classics, psychology, even a few unexpected stories that shine a light on this.
Think of this as your shortcut to getting truly clued in, not just on the big ideas of strategy, but the nitty-gritty, the how and why certain approaches actually work on the ground.
Yeah. Whether you're heading into a tricky meeting or facing a big life choice, what we want to unpack is how often the real decider, the win, is buried in those subtle, precise little elements.
Absolutely. The devil and the victory is in the details, as they say.
So our goal isn't just to list principles. It's to explore why these seemingly tiny, precise actions can cause massive shifts. We hope you walk away looking at challenges, maybe even your own experiences, a little differently, seeing how the smallest move can pack the biggest punch. Ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start small, right? At the micro level, inside the individual mind, how specific mental disciplines shape what happens externally. It's about personal command, that inner battle for clarity.
Yeah, and what's really key here is understanding how, in the thick of it, what the sources call the heat of battle, which could be anything, right?
Yeah.
A project crisis, sudden criticism, just intense pressure.
Our minds tend to wobble. We get hit by strong emotions, fear, anger, frustration, and holding on to what they call presence of mind is absolutely crucial. It's about keeping your thinking sharp,
Yeah.
a very specific, deliberate act.
And it's more than just like looking calm on the outside, isn't it?
Oh, definitely.
This source has really hammered this point. You have to actively fight that emotional pull of the moment. It's like mental weightlifting, making your mind tougher by exposing it to adversity. Learning to detach just enough from the chaos around you.
That's the key word, detachment.
Yeah.
It allows you to stay decisive, confident, even aggressive when you need to be, even if everything's going sideways. Precision thinking under fire.
So how do you actually do that when your brain's just buzzing with anxiety?
The mechanism suggested is pretty interesting. It's about forcing your mind onto something simple, something concrete, like a calming ritual,
Yeah.
or maybe a repetitive task that you are good at.
The idea is a mind that's fully absorbed in executing a precise, familiar action. It literally doesn't have the bandwidth for anxiety. That focus brings composure, clears the path for clear thought. You're channeling the mental energy, detail by detail, into something grounding.
You can really see this with General Patton, can't you? His whole thing of constantly visiting the front lines, putting himself in danger.
Right, it wasn't just for show.
No. It was like a calculated method, confronting his own fear over and over, getting familiar with it until it lost some of its power. Apparently, his famous strength was largely an effort of will. It teaches that facing fears systematically makes them smaller.
And building that confidence step by meticulous step. Each exposure, each detail faced, strengthens the resolve.
Exactly. And then there's that amazing story about the tea master.
Ah, I love that one.
Right. Challenged to a duel by some arrogant samurai, and what does he do?
He makes tea.
Exactly. Calmly, meticulously goes through the whole ritual, every single precise detail. The water, the whisk, the pouring.
And his composure, born from that intense focus on the details of his craft, it just radiated this sense of mastery. The samurai was convinced he must be an incredible swordsman.
And back down. Without a single sword stroke. It shows how a mind completely absorbed in a detailed task can master anxiety, even with stakes that high. Every tiny movement of that ceremony was part of his defense.
And it really was.
So for you listening, think about those high-pressure moments. Maybe it's information overload, maybe a personal crisis. Could focusing intensely on a simple, deliberate task, some small detail, help you find that center, that internal strength you build by mastering your own reactions through focused, almost microscopic attention? It can be huge. It's the power hidden in the meticulous.
And building on that idea of pressure, let's talk about the death ground strategy. This one's intense.
It's out.
The sources point out that we often waste time dreaming about the future, you know? We always keep a little escape route, a crutch in the back of our minds, just in case.
Yeah, plan B.
Exactly. But putting yourself on death ground means deliberately creating a situation where you feel totally enclosed and without options. Real pressure at your back, nowhere to retreat.
Wow. Why would you do that?
Because it forces an incredible singular focus. Nothing else matters. The key here is deliberately removing the safety nets, making failure a direct, immediate consequence. It's not just feeling stress, it's a strategic wake-up call you apply to yourself. You meticulously remove every last subtle detail of a fallback.
Okay, I'm starting to see the logic, however harsh it sounds.
Well, the mechanism is powerful. Your body apparently responds with a surge of energy. Your mind just locks in, focuses intensely. Urgency is forced on you. No more procrastination, no more. I'll get to it later.
Right.
The sources even suggest that our modern comfort, this illusion of limitless time, makes us less serious, less thorough. It's the terrible price we pay for avoiding the thought of, well, ultimate consequences, or even just extreme pressure.
Hernan Cortez, that's the classic example, isn't it? Landing in Mexico, his guys are getting restless, dreaming of going back to Cuba with gold.
Mutiny brewing.
And Cortez gives the order. Drill holes in the ships, make them all unseaworthy.
A chillingly precise move.
Absolutely. Burn their only escape route. His 500 men suddenly had one option, win or die right there. That single irreversible act created this immense urgency, multiplied their strength. Suddenly he had the psychological weight of a much larger army. Every plank, every hole was a deliberate detail, sealing their fate and focusing their minds.
And then there's Dostoevsky, a very different kind of death ground.
The mock execution. Horrifying.
Yeah, totally horrifying. But the sources highlight the cruel theater of it, the careful details, the priests, the hoods, the waiting coffins, that last-second pardon, all designed to make him feel death viscerally deep in his bones.
And instead of breaking him,
it transformed him, shook him out of his sense of wandering, sparked this incredible rebirth. He wrote like a man possessed for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And meticulously staged terror, down to the timing, had this profound galvanizing effect.
So for you listening, how often do you hold on to those fallback options? The ones that maybe dilute your focus, divide your energy. The idea isn't literal danger, obviously, but maybe reflect on intentionally removing lesser choices, forcing that deeper commitment, that thoroughness.
Yeah, facing that psychic death, that point of no return, it can unlock incredible focus. Maybe that little safety net you barely think about is the precise detail holding you back from full commitment.
Okay, sticking with the micro level, the human element, let's talk about knowing your enemy, but specifically the art of subtle observation.
This is crucial because the real target in strategy isn't just, the enemy's army or resources. It's the mind of the man or woman who runs it.
Right. Understand how they think, how their mind works.
And you hold the key to deceiving and controlling it.
But it requires this incredible, almost forensic attention to detail in how you watch people, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You have to train yourself to read people, not just assume they're like you, but actively picking up the signals they unconsciously send.
The small stuff.
Exactly. The slips of the tongue, tones of voice, styles of dress, nervous twitches, sudden irrational actions, a look in the eye that contradicts our words, the things we say after a drink. These aren't noise, they're data. Tiny, revealing details.
So how do you get good at that? Because we all tend to project, see what we expect to see.
That's the biggest hurdle. Overcoming that blindness and narcissism, seeing others as more than just reflections of ourselves. You have to really struggle to see others dispassionately. Treat each person like an alien culture you need to study carefully without judgment.
And the key is?
Shut off your incessant interior monologue, empty your thoughts, and anchor yourself in the moment. Meticulously observe without your own mental clutter getting in the way.
Prince Metternich, he was apparently a master of this.
A genius at it. The sources describe him studying enemies quietly from behind this charming, relaxed facade. He'd use that seeming ease to get them to open up.
Like a Venus flytrap, almost.
Kind of. And his years-long study of the Tsar's rather strange personality, all its little quirks and insecurities, allowed him to subtly plant ideas. Like convincing the Tsar that revolution was way more dangerous than the status quo, shifting the Tsar's whole focus, no overt force, just precise observation and subtle influence based on understanding the details of that specific mind.
Or think about David and Saul in the Bible. That test David set up.
Brilliant, so subtle.
His absence from the feast. Polite, but cool, deliberately ambiguous.
Designed to be read two ways.
Exactly. And Saul, simmering with secret hatred, saw it as a deliberate slight, exploded in anger, revealed everything.
While a friend, the text notes, might just wonder but let it pass. The smallest social detail becomes a precise diagnostic tool.
And then there's Yagi Minonori, the samurai actor. His school emphasized mind reading.
The Shinkage school.
And he could supposedly sense danger just walking down a path with no visible threat at all. Just this heightened sensitivity to tiny unconscious signals others missed, almost like a superpower built on noticing imperceptible details.
It's an incredible skill. So for you listening, this really hammers home how vital it is to sharpen your observation skills. If you're too self-absorbed, you'll misread people, misread situations, your strategies will fail.
Right. Truly understanding why people do what they do, down to the subtle motivations revealed in tiny details, that's a huge strategic advantage.
Definitely.
Okay, let's zoom out now. From the individual mind to the bigger picture, organizations, groups working together, here the specific details of how things are structured, how morale is handled, how partnerships work. That's everything.
Absolutely. First step, the precision of command and control. Basically, how information flows and decisions get made.
Because you can have the most brilliant strategy ever.
Yeah.
But if the team executing it is sluggish or confused,
it means nothing. The sources are clear. The structure of the army, the chain of command, and the relationship of the parts to the whole, that will give your strategies force. It's the precise mechanics of execution.
In building that effective structure, that speed and mobility, it comes down to specific details, doesn't it? Like having a single authority on top, avoiding divided leadership.
Crucial. And giving people a sense of the overall goal, but also the latitude to take action, not just drones following orders.
And meticulously picking the right people. People who get the spirit of the idea, not just the letter. People who can adapt based on the details they see on the ground.
Right. And the danger you're trying to avoid here is groupthink. That trap where people prioritize harmony or looking good over making the right call.
Leads to cautious, slow, unimaginative decisions, sometimes totally irrational ones.
Exactly. Groupthink is essentially a failure to process the critical details because of social dynamics, a breakdown in the precise flow of real information.
George Marshall, when he took over the War Department before World War II, that's a great case study.
Fantastic example. He inherited a total mess, right? Hopelessly dysfunctional, egos, communication breakdowns, overlapping jobs.
A bureaucratic nightmare.
Totally.
Yeah.
And he transformed it. How? Primarily through meticulous selection, grooming, and placement of his protégés. He basically metaphorically cloned himself in key people.
Empowering them to make changes.
And those changes included drilling down into the details, aggressively cutting irrelevant reports, reducing wasted time on every level. That focus on streamlining the small bureaucratic details made the whole department vastly more efficient. It unclogged the arteries.
And Napoleon had his own way around bureaucracy, didn't he? His directed telescope.
Brilliant. Within that rigid military system, he built this informal network. Friends, allies, spies, young officers.
A shadow brigade.
Pretty much. To get him instant information from the battlefield. Bypassing the slow official reports, he'd send them out with secret instructions to gather specific details. That gave him incredible flexibility, real-time granular data.
But get the details of command wrong, and it can be disastrous, like General Hamilton at Suvla Bay in World War I.
Yeah, a tragic example. He apparently mastered the logistical details, crafted an excellent strategy for the invasion.
But missed the crucial piece.
He ignored the one thing closest to him, the chain of command and the circuit of communications, how orders and info would actually flow.
And his general on the beach got bogged down, worried about supplies, refused to advance.
And the whole thing failed despite the brilliant plan. The breakdown was in the operational flow, the overlooked detail of how information and authority actually functioned or failed to function in reality.
So for you listening, how well do you really understand the communication circuits in your own team, your company, even your family? Overlooking those specific details, who talks to whom, how decisions actually get made, the personalities involved can sink the best plans. It's not just the what, it's the detailed how.
And that flows perfectly into our next point, the nuances of morale. Because structure is one thing, but the spirit of the group, that's critical.
Totally. What good is a well-oiled machine if the people inside don't want to make it run?
Exactly. And the sources say the secret to motivating people and maintaining their morale is to get them to think less about themselves and more about the group. And morale is incredibly contagious.
But it's not just about giving pep talks, is it? It's subtler, more about precise actions.
Much subtler. It's about infecting your troops with enthusiasm, leading from the front, visibly sharing dangers and sacrifices, making sure rewards and punishments are rare but meaningful. Napoleon's famous line, "The moral is to the physical as 3 to 1, really captures it. It's about the cumulative effect of many small, consistent, thoughtful details in leadership.
So the mechanism is about bonding people, creating a shared cause, maybe even a crusade against a hated enemy.
Yeah, making them feel their survival, their success is tied to the group. Skilled man management, as the sources call it, plays on emotions, precisely understanding what motivates and unites people at a granular level. Every interaction contributes.
Napoleon himself was apparently a master man manager, taking these raw recruits, millions of them,
Unruly, undisciplined.
and molding them into this incredible force. How? By uniting them, first the revolution, then French glory, appealing to their thirst for glory and recognition, keeping them constantly moving, always a new campaign.
He understood the emotional details, the specific levers to pull for that vast group of individuals.
Oliver Cromwell's New Model Army is another fascinating example, how specific he was in building morale.
Incredibly specific. He recruited soldiers based on their deep religious visions, testing their faith. He appointed officers based on merit, not birth. And crucially, he paid attention to the practical details, made sure they were well-fed, well-clothed, and promptly paid.
That combination, shared belief plus basic needs met, created immense loyalty and discipline. It was morale built on both spiritual and material details.
And a more modern take, Vince Lombardi with the Green Bay Packers.
The motivational genius.
He saw talent as mostly equal in the NFL. The difference, attitude, spirit. And he worked on that indirectly, talked to them as if they were already winners, got under their skin.
Didn't just yell.
No. He meticulously changed the details of practice, made it quiet, intense, focused, workmanlike, changed their daily reality, expanded their belief in what was possible through the small, consistent details of their work ethic.
And Caesar with the 10th Legion. That's classic psychological maneuvering.
Brilliant. Armies panicking about the Germans, rumors flying.
You arrest the guys spreading rumors, clear message. Then the masterstroke announces he'll only take the valiant 10th Legion into battle.
Boom. Shames the rest of the army, appeals directly to their pride, that specific detail of belonging to the elite 10th.
Suddenly they're begging to fight.
Yeah.
Transforms the whole mood with one precise, targeted appeal.
It's amazing. So for you listening, think about your own leadership, even in small ways. How do you affect group dynamics? Fostering cohesion, driving people. It's often not about loud commands. It's about shared purpose, demonstrated commitment, paying attention to the human details that build morale and trust.
Okay, now let's shift into the dynamics of actual engagement, conflict, competition, how strategies play out. And here, managing the details becomes hypercritical. First up, deception strategies, the meticulous art of making people see what isn't there.
Yeah, the goal is simple. Make it really hard for your enemies to know what's actually going on. You do that by deliberately distorting the signs they rely on, by playing masterfully with appearances.
And it's not just big illusions, right?
Yeah.
It's often about the small stuff, the granular details.
Absolutely paramount. Creating a seamless blend of fact and fiction, essentially manufacturing a reality to match their desires so they end up fooling themselves.
Oh, what kind of details?
Things like altering the number of cooking fires to fake army size, using decoys, moving troops in deceptive patterns, feeding spies carefully crafted false information. The key, often, is the sheer volume and seeming mundanity, the banal and bureaucratic details that make the fake seem completely real. It's the tiny specifics that sell the big lie.
So you're exploiting their assumptions.
Yeah.
Their tendency to fill in the blanks.
Exactly, or just overwhelming them with convincing but false details. If you feed them enough plausible specifics, their own minds connect the dots in the way you want them to. They become complicit in their own deception.
Operation Fortitude,
Yeah.
D-Day, that's the absolute gold standard, isn't it?
Legendary, creating an entire phantom army, a few SAG, under patent, purely out of phony paperwork and wireless transmissions.
The dummy tanks.
Yeah.
Rubber, plastic, wood, fake airfields.
Incredible detail. And they let German agents steal fake documents, intercept misleading messages designed to be too banal to be seen as fake.
All that meticulous effort, all those false details. Convince Hitler the real invasion was coming at Pas-de-Calais. pulled vital German forces away from Normandy.
Every fake radio signal, every precisely misplaced dummy tank, it all added up to this massive strategic win. The level of detail was just staggering.
And way back, Joshua at AI Classic Decoy.
Textbook. Pretend to lose, flee, draw the enemy out of their fortified city.
Well, the real force ambushes from behind,
Yeah.
captures the empty city, sets it ablaze.
Success hinged entirely on the precise timing and making that feigned retreat look absolutely convincing in every detail. The enemy had to believe they were winning.
Dudley Clark in North Africa, too, with his dummy tanks and fake wooden planes.
Making it impossible for the Germans to figure out the real size and location of the British forces. The props were so detailed, apparently, that German intel actually figured out how to spot fakes by looking for specific wooden struts.
Wow, that shows how deep the detail game went on both sides.
It really does. So for you, the listener, think about how carefully constructed appearances, built on meticulously chosen details, can mislead in any context. Actions, even faked ones, often speak louder than words. Always question if what you're seeing is the whole story. The most effective illusions are built from countless convincing, small, specific details.
Okay, let's pivot. From active deception to strategic inaction. Counterattack and non-engagement. Patience as a weapon.
This one feels counterintuitive sometimes, doesn't it? Our instinct is usually to charge in.
Definitely. But the insight here is that moving first often puts you at a disadvantage. You show your hand.
Right. The real power can come from holding back, letting the other side make the first move. That gives you flexibility to counterattack from any angle, hitting them where they've exposed themselves.
Patience is key. That pause lets you sniff out opportunities, time your counterpunch perfectly, catch them off guard.
And retreating, the sources argue, isn't weakness. It's strength. It buys valuable time to recover, to think, to gain perspective. Sometimes, doing nothing is the most effective action. Letting the opponent waste their energy on hitting air, every bit of their fury spent uselessly because you refuse to provide a target.
So the mechanism is exploiting their impatience, baiting them into a rash move.
Exactly. Letting their own aggression become their downfall. Like in jiu-jitsu, the soft art. You use their force against them with minimal effort, often through subtle shifts, precise evasions. You're redirecting the details of their own attack.
FDR, in his presidential campaigns, he was apparently a master of this.
He really learned the power of holding back. Let opponents like Hoover attack first, expose their weaknesses.
And FDR would just stay silent.
Often, yeah. Let them go too far, sound shrill and irrational, which, as the sources say, played badly with the public. Once they were vulnerable, overextended. Then Roosevelt would come in for the kill. His patience, his precise reading of their reactions was a huge advantage.
Robert the Bruce in Scotland, facing those huge English armies.
He refused to fight them head-on, retreated into the forests. But his guys, these pirates on horseback,
Highly mobile.
they relentlessly raided northern England, burned crops, devastated the countryside. An indirect tit-for-tat strategy, hitting the English where it hurt, detail by detail, eroding their resources and their will to fight, made the whole campaign too costly for them.
And that image of the bullfighter.
Perfect illustration. The bull charges furiously at the cape.
Hits nothing but air.
Exactly. Stand your ground, give it nothing solid to hit, and it exhausts itself. The harder it charges, the faster it burns out, creating the opening for the matador. It's about letting the opponent's momentum down to the last detailed charge become their undoing.
So for you listening, think about patience as a tool. In negotiations, arguments, projects. How can you use subtle timing, calculated non-engagement, to turn an opponent's aggression back on them? Win the appearance battle and the actual battle through meticulous inaction.
Yeah, it's a powerful concept.
Okay, next up, another strategy that relies on subtlety. Fait accompli. The subtle accumulation of power, operating under the radar again.
Right. The core idea. Big, obvious power grabs are risky. They provoke backlash, suspicion.
People get defensive.
Exactly. So the best solution is to take small bites, swallow little territories. You play on people's short attention spans, accumulate power through almost invisible incremental steps, detail by detail.
The key is staying under the radar, right?
Yeah.
So by the time anyone notices what you're doing,
It may already be too late. The territory is yours. Fait accompli. And then the sources cheekily suggest you can always claim self-defense or inevitability. It hinges on those gains seeming insignificant individually, just minor details, until they suddenly add up to something irreversible.
so the mechanism is just
Yeah.
gradual accumulation, small wins building up,
Precisely. Each small gain seems minor, but together they create substantial power before anyone sounds the alarm. As one source puts it, to multiply small successes is precisely to build one treasure after another. In time, one becomes rich without realizing how it has come about. It's the compounded interest of 1,000 tiny, deliberate, precise actions.
Frederick the Great in Silesia. That's a classic example.
Textbook. He becomes king of Prussia, huge ambitions, but knows a direct challenge is too dangerous.
So he picks his moment. Political instability in Austria.
And he moves his army into just one small Austrian province, Silesia, seemingly a minor detail on the European map. When Austria reacts, he uses that reaction to justify potentially taking more, eventually securing Silesia. Subtle, incremental aggression that avoided a massive coalition against him until the deed was done. Each small bite carefully chosen.
Charles de Gaulle in Africa doing WWII is another great one. Free France needed legitimacy.
Needed territory soldiers.
So he targets French colonies in Central Africa, seemingly less strategic, less likely to provoke a major fight. Chad, Cameroon, French Congo, Gabon.
Takes them with relative ease. Little bites.
By the time he gets back to England, he controls this huge area, thousands of troops. Transformed his status through small, largely uncontested gains. The precise choice of less strategic details allowed him to build momentum quietly.
It's brilliant. So for you listening, think about the power of slow, steady accumulation in your career, business goals, personal projects. But also be aware of the nibblers. Recognize when small incursions might be part of a larger strategy against you. Respond to those small details before they become irreversible fate's accomplice.
Good point. Okay, now let's talk about finding weaknesses. Center of gravity and divide and conquer. Pinpointing vulnerabilities.
This is about finding the linchpin, the core idea. Everyone has a source of power on which he or she depends. That critical source holding the whole thing together, that's the center of gravity.
And if you hit that specific point,
you inflict disproportionate pain, the whole structure can unravel. Or the alternative approach, divide and conquer. Separate the parts, sow distrust, and you can bring down even the strongest opponent. It's about a laser focus on the specific Achilles heel, the binding detail, or the potential fracture lines.
So you have to look beneath the surface, right?
Yeah.
Find what they really value, what they truly depend on.
Exactly. Search for what the other side most cherishes and protects. For divide and conquer, you meticulously dissect the parts that make up the whole, and then precisely inject mistrust or create divisions between them. It's a detailed surgical approach.
And the mechanism is just disruption. Break the foundation or break the internal bonds.
Precisely. Attack the specific details holding the system together, and you can trigger a collapse that seems way bigger than your initial move.
Rockefeller building Standard Oil. He didn't just attack other oil drillers head on.
No, brilliant strategy. He targeted their center of gravity transportation. First, monopoly control over the railroads they needed, then control over the pipelines.
That granular, precise control over the logistics.
Crippled the independent producers. Showed how hitting the core support system, the specific enabling detail, can collapse the whole industry around it without a direct fight.
Themistocles at Salamis. Ancient Greece versus Persia. Overwhelming Persian numbers.
But Themistocles uses divide and conquer with incredible detail. Sends a trusted slave with a carefully faked message to Xerxes.
Saying the Greek allies are arguing about to retreat.
Plays perfectly on Xerxes' desire for a quick, decisive win, lures the massive Persian fleet into the narrow Salamis Channel.
Where their numbers become a disadvantage. Crowded, chaotic.
And the Greeks, though outnumbered, can pick them off. Effectively divided and conquered the fleet by sowing that single, precise seed of doubt.
And Napoleon's strategy of the central position, when he was outnumbered by armies coming at him from different directions.
Classic maneuver. He'd isolate one part of the enemy, concentrate his force to crush it, then quickly turn to hit the next part.
Required incredibly detailed intelligence, right? Knowing exactly where everyone was.
Carefully plotting the known dispositions of his foes, using probing cavalry patrols, delivering a series of smaller blows against scattered adversaries. Each blow precisely targeted based on detailed reconnaissance.
So for you listening, this is about developing that insight. Finding the true source of power or vulnerability in a system, a project, an argument, or understanding how creating internal divisions by targeting specific points of friction or mistrust can weaken even strong opponents. It's about seeing the critical details that hold things together or could tear them apart.
Powerful tools when used strategically.
Okay, let's talk speed. Velocity as a weapon. Blitzkrieg maneuver. unleashing coordinated speed.
In a world that's often slow and indecisive, pure speed will bring you untold power. Hit first, fast, before they can properly think or prepare.
Throws them off balance, makes them reactive, emotional.
Exactly. Prone to error. The precision here is in the timing, the seamless coordination, the relentless pace.
So it's about extreme fluidity. Everything moving together perfectly.
That's the ideal. Advancing faster than the enemy can process information. Using that Boyd cycle, observe, orient, decide, act faster than they can. Gaining that critical time advantage through rapid, precise transitions.
And the mechanism is just keeping them constantly off balance, reacting, making mistakes.
Pretty much. Denying them the time to gather details, analyze, plan an effective response. Leads to mental and physical exhaustion on their side.
The Mongols under Genghis Khan. They perfected this, didn't they? Took raw cavalry speed and made it strategic.
Transformed it. Organized, disciplined, strategic. Used that slow, quick rhythm for surprise. Employed strange weapons, flaming arrows for smoke screens, mobile supply chariots, all moving at remarkable speed.
The specific details of their equipment and tactics were all geared towards maximizing that disorienting velocity.
Absolutely. And Rommel in North Africa used the desert like an ocean, kept his tanks in perpetual motion.
Mentally exhausted the British.
Totally. His movements seemed random but were calculated. Feint one way, attack from another unexpected side. Use trucks to kick up dust, a simple detail to fake a larger force.
Forced the British into endless mistakes, spreading their forces thin, trying to react. Every dust cloud, every sudden turn was a planned detail in his speed-based strategy.
Brilliant. And Grant's Vicksburg campaign, another example of defying convention with speed and maneuver.
The fame drew the Confederates off.
While Grant rapidly moved his main army around, cut off supplies, forced the enemy back, a light-on-their-feet approach against a more static opponent. The precise timing and execution of those swift, complex movements were key.
So for you, think about the disorienting power of speed in your own field. Business, sports, projects. How can you maintain flexibility, adapt faster than rivals? Master that observe, orient, decide, act loop, paying attention to every detail that enables quick, seamless action.
It's a huge advantage if you can pull it off.
Okay, next. Moral warfare and terror. Using perception and emotion as weapons. Targeting the mind, the will.
Two sides of a coin, in a way. For moral warfare, the goal is broad support. Your cause must seem righteous and just.
So you have to frame it carefully. Paint yourself as noble, the enemy as
authoritarian, hypocritical, power-hungry. You meticulously craft the narrative, detail by detail.
How do you do that precisely?
By striking first with a moral offensive against their weak spots, using strong and appealing language that resonates with existing frustrations, cleverly quoting their own words against them, speaking in clear, black and white terms, maybe subtly exaggerating the differences. Every phrase, every accusation is a carefully chosen detail in building that moral case. Okay? And terror. That's different. Darker.
Much darker. The idea is it's the ultimate way to paralyze a people's will to resist, not through victory, but through fear. Sporadic acts of violence that create a constant feeling of threat. So the precision is in the psychological impact, not the military one.
Exactly. The goal is not battlefield victory, but causing maximum chaos and provoking the other side into desperate overreaction. Attackers often melt invisibly into the population, making them hard to find. And crucially, they tailor their actions for the mass media.
Creating the illusion they're everywhere, much stronger than they are.
Precisely. It's a war of nerves. Every attack, every detail is chosen for its symbolic value, its ability to generate fear and media attention.
So both strategies, moral warfare and terror, they work by exploiting perception, emotion. The precision is in manipulating those psychological triggers.
Right. Martin Luther and his 95 Theses, prime example of moral warfare.
Attacked the sale of indulgences, painted the church as corrupt.
A direct moral offensive, quickly translated, printed, spread like wildfire, tapped into existing discontent, portrayed the church as power-hungry, sparked a revolution. The specific theological details, combined with powerful, accessible language, were precisely what ignited it.
Samuel Adams before the American Revolution, too. Master of ratcheting up tension.
Meticulously. Exposed indirect taxes, organized protests, liberty, property, and no stamps. Provoked incidents like the Boston Massacre. Then spread the fiery word. Painted the British as pure evil to justify fighting. Every article, every slogan, every confrontation was a precisely placed detail in his moral campaign.
And for terror, the Tet Offensive in Vietnam is often cited.
Yeah, though complex. Militarily, a disaster for the Viet Cong. But strategic,
They
though.
targeted televisual, symbolic locations in Saigon, places the American media were concentrated.
Exactly, to create the dramatic and deceptive impression that the Viet Cong were everywhere. Even though they weren't, militarily speaking, the goal was to shock the American public, erode support for the war, especially in an election year.
So the specific detailed targeting of media centers turned a tactical loss into a strategic psychological win.
Largely, yes. And then you have the assassins back in the Middle Ages.
Targeted killings of key leaders, infiltrating their inner circles.
A masterpiece of economy, the sources call it. Instilled this widespread fear they could strike anyone, anytime. That fear, generated by precise, targeted, though relatively few, killings, gave them immense political power. The detail was in the precision and unpredictability, maximizing psychological impact.
So for you listening, understanding how narratives get shaped, how details are used to build support or sow fear, it's critical today. Don't succumb to the emotion, the fear, or the outrage. Maintain rationality. That's your last line of defense. Recognizing the subtle details of manipulation is key.
Absolutely vital.
Okay, let's shift gears again towards the long game. Thinking beyond immediate fights, focusing on grand vision and, crucially, how things end. Let's start with the exit strategy, mastering the conclusion.
This is so often overlooked, but it's incredibly important. How you end something, a project, a conflict, even a relationship will influence and even determine what you do next.
A messy ending can haunt you.
Reverberate for years. While a well-managed ending handled with precision sets you up for a better future. It's about the lasting impact of those final details.
So knowing when to stop is key. Avoiding fights with no realistic exits.
That's called the height of strategic wisdom. It requires a more fluid outlook, seeing wins and losses as temporary transitions. You need to meticulously focus on the quality and mood of the ending. Maybe generosity is the smart play. Turn an enemy into an ally. Every final gesture, every subtle nuance in how you conclude matters immensely for what comes next.
It's about controlling that final impression, shaping the future.
Exactly. Managing the lingering perceptions, the very last details, can dictate future relationships and outcomes long after the main event is over.
Napoleon, after his huge victories like Austerlitz,
Yeah.
he apparently messed this up.
Big time. Imposed really harsh terms on Austria and Prussia, humiliated them.
Short-sighted, focused on the immediate win.
And those punitive details bred resentment, a powerful desire for revenge. They secretly rearmed. And when Napoleon was weak after Russia, they pounced. Shows how a vengeful ending, dictated by immediate satisfying details, can sow the seeds of future disaster.
And Desert Storm, billed as that quick 100-hour win.
But years later still felt like an unfinished war. A key advisor admitted, "We never did have a plan to terminate the war."
Wow. Just no detailed exit strategy from the start.
Yeah.
Left a huge vacuum.
A critical oversight. And this applies even in everyday life, right? Social interactions.
Like ending a conversation.
Yeah. The sources suggest ending it a moment before the other side expects it, ideally at the peak of enjoyment, creates a devastatingly positive afterglow, leaves them wanting more, not less. That detailed timing, that precise sense of the peak moment avoids boredom and shapes their final impression of you.
So for you listening, really think about how you conclude things. Projects, arguments, collaborations. Manage those ending details intentionally to shape what happens next. Because, as the source says, until the very end, everything else is a transition. Those closing details are often the critical opening details for the next phase.
Well said.
Okay, building on that long-term view. Grand strategy, the architect's vision, seeing the whole picture.
This is about elevating yourself above the battlefield, focusing on long-term objectives, crafting an entire campaign, not just reacting to individual fights. It's about grasping the whole structure, including every potential detail over a long timeline.
Requires looking deeper, understanding yourself, others, the past.
And having a clear sense of the future as much as possible. Grand strategists strike at the roots of a problem, not at its symptoms. They meticulously plot several steps ahead, seeing each battle, each move, as just one link in a long chain towards the ultimate goal. It's a detailed, multi-layered foresight.
How do they maintain that perspective? Stay detached.
Rationality is key. Controlling emotions, keeping the overall goals always in view. That simplifies the day-to-day tactical chaos. This extended vision lets them make plans over long periods, often unnoticed by those stuck in the immediate details. They see the patterns in the countless small details that others miss.
Alexander the Great. His campaigns seem almost erratic sometimes, but
Sources argue there was a grand strategic consistency, shaped by his sense of destiny, yes, but also Aristotle's teaching on controlling his emotions, thinking ahead to the consequences. Every move, even detours, was part of a meticulous long-term plan to unite Greece, manage his forces, always subordinating tactics to the grand objective. Each detail served the long game.
And the North Vietnamese in the Vietnam War,
Yeah.
their win wasn't just military.
No, it was grand strategy, continually broadening their outlook, analyzing the global context, extending their vision beyond the battlefield to politics and culture.
Like the Tet Offensive targeting media attention.
Exactly. Showed a profound understanding of grand strategy over tactics. They knew a single, precisely televised detail could shift American politics and undermine the will to fight.
That mountaintop image the sources use is powerful.
It really captures it. From up high, the general sees past the immediate smoke and confusion, sees reserves, enemy movements, the battle's future shape. That elevated view, built on discerning the critical details from above, allows for precise direction of the whole war.
So for you, it's about understanding the difference between being just tactical, caught in the weeds, and truly strategic, seeing the long game.
Yes, gaining that broader perspective, seeing how all the intricate details connect, simplifies decisions and leads to more lasting, impactful results.
Okay, final piece, bringing it all together. Becoming your own strategist, adapting and evolving.
This is the crucial synthesis. Strategy isn't a magic formula, not a rigid recipe.
The ideas are just ingredients, nutrients for the soil.
Exactly. Meant to inspire appropriate and creative response in the moment. The real key is to let go of all fetishes, books, techniques, formulas, and truly learn to become your own strategist. Internalize the principles so they become second nature.
Requires constant self-correction. A guerrilla war on your mind.
Yeah, allowing no static lines of defense in your thinking, making everything fluid and mobile, being ruthless on yourself to avoid repeating tired methods, trusting your fingertip feel, that intuition built on deep understanding for quick, precise decisions. It's constant, detailed self-awareness and adaptation.
So it's about internalizing the principles so deeply they become intuitive, allowing for fluid adaptation instead of just copying past successes.
Precisely. Mastering the underlying details of strategy so well that the right response, even in a new situation, feels almost instinctual. That's where true improvisation comes from.
Alfred Hitchcock. He made controlling every detail of his films a life principle.
Total control freak, but strategically brilliant. Controlled scripts meticulously. Famously used a camera with no film in it, just to appease producers demanding useless shots, managing their expectations with a precise, deceptive detail.
Influenced actors indirectly, infecting them with the emotion he wanted.
Yeah, demonstrating how detailed, indirect control could execute his exact artistic vision without arguments or compromises. Every tiny detail, even a camera with no film, was a strategic move.
Leo McCarey, another director, seemed casual, messing around on set.
But his method in madness hid deep control. His long takes, loosely guided scenes, they had this incredible spontaneity and liveliness. Why? Because he knew exactly what he wanted, down to the most subtle detail. Would reshoot endlessly if the look on the actors' faces was not loving enough.
So the informal style masked incredible precision, allowed improvisation within his detailed vision.
Exactly. And Napoleon again. His planning was this marvel of combined flexibility and detail, absorbed massive amounts of information, analyzed endlessly, imagined enemy responses, accidents.
Then created free-flowing plans with branches, kept options open.
Yes, channeled the chaos towards the enemy, essentially created his own luck through meticulous preparation and precise adaptability. His genius was using detail not for rigidity, but for incredible dynamic flexibility.
So the ultimate lesson for you, the listener, again, mastery isn't about rigid formulas. It's deep understanding combined with fluid adaptation. Paying precise attention to the minutiae actually enables creative improvisation and control, especially when things get unpredictable.
That's the paradox, isn't it? The deeper you go into the details, the more flexible you can become.
So wrapping this deep dive up, it seems crystal clear. Whether it's mastering yourself, managing teams, dealing with rivals, planning for the future, the ability to see, understand, and leverage the precise details is what separates truly effective strategy from wishful thinking.
Yeah, moving past the surface to grasp those hidden truths, the small things that actually drive the outcomes.
We really hope you take a moment to reflect on how often small matters steer the big results in your own life. The real power isn't in the grand statements, usually. It's in that relentless, almost unseen application of insight to the everyday details, the precision of your focus, the accuracy of your actions.
Indeed.
Maybe the real deep dive, then, isn't just into overwhelming amounts of information, but into those microscopic, easily overlooked nuances that truly determine how every battle and maybe every life unfolds.